So one of the things that I learned when I started out was look for the money, not just for the deals. Spend just as much time looking for money as you do for the deals. And the reason I mention risk here is because that's a very important part of what I do. My role in the partnership with me and Adam is my role is really a risk manager, trying to figure out if we're raising all this money, how do we make sure that the projects go well, we don't take on the wrong sort of projects. So just my background very quickly. Who's heard of Mandela Community College? All right, okay. Anyone go there? No, you just know of it. Okay, well this school's famous, actually. And it's famous because it was the first school in the country to hire a full-time security guard. And the reason for that was the head teacher got a death threat. And they took it so seriously that they hired an ex-policeman to come in and look after her. So that was kind of my beginning. So I don't think I was kind of trained to become this investment guy or anything like that. I was just very fortunate that from there I went over to Queen Elizabeth II College, next to Leicester University. From there I ended up at Manchester University studying finance. And it was there that I kind of realised if you wanted to go into the kind of fields that I'd been trained up for, whether that's in the city or accountancy or whatever, you either had to be really, really bright, which I wasn't, or I didn't feel I was. I wasn't going to be a top-end accountant or a top-end stockbroker, or you just had to know the right people. And that world, I saw that with my own eyes. People who failed their degree and went off and had offers from The Economist and JP Morgan and places like that because they knew the right people. So I was neither of those two groups. So I thought what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to actually try my luck at a business. And so for me it's kind of like a fork in the road, right? I'm sure we've all faced these kinds of situations in our lives where you have to make a decision: do I go this way or that way? And for me, I didn't really know what business I was going to start, so there wasn't any kind of idea if it had to be the property or anything else. So what I did was I actually went and worked for, I can't mention their name, but I can tell you that it's a large manufacturer of crisps based in Leicester, and I was doing night work basically. So here I was, just about to get a great paying job and going off and doing all that, to working, I think it was the princely sum of about £6 an hour, something like that. And I was carting these pallets of trucks, pallets of crisps around into trucks. But the great thing about that job, the reason I took it was because it gave me the nights to work and some money to pay for my living costs and everything. And in the daytime I could go and look at properties. That was the rationale, right? And I thought, well, sleep, I can catch up on the weekend. And it wasn't the best decision for my health, but that's pretty much what I did for the start. And so one of the really key decisions that I made at that time, which was a fluke, but it turned out to be really, really worked out really well for me, was I spent less time learning from people in the UK and more time learning from people elsewhere. So I just found a bunch of US forums, right? So I don't know if they still exist, but they were called creonline.com. That was a big one. There was another one called something like Dealmakers Cafe or something like that. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll fish it out. But there was 2 or 3 really big, well-known sort of internet online forums where loads of American investors sort of just went and talked about stuff. And the thing was, they were more advanced in the way they did things. So here, people weren't, at that time, this is 2001, so I'd just come out of uni, 2001, 2002, trying to figure out how this whole property thing worked. And people here, the mentality was, you go to an estate, you save up loads of money, go to an estate agent, go to an auction, buy a house, right? Those guys were well advanced, so they were doing internet advertising on Google and something called Overture, which got bought up by Yahoo, and all these different weird search engines I'd never heard of, and advertising things like, we'll buy your house for cash, and the kind of stuff you've all seen, but it wasn't being done here. So I looked at that and I thought, I'm going to do that here. So I told a few people here, and they said, you're really dumb, you're really stupid, we thought you were an educated person. Why would someone sell their house for less than it's worth? Why would anybody do that? But I'd seen enough stories online, and and I was naive actually. So that's one of the benefits of being young, is you're just dumb, and naive, and you take risks that you in hindsight you might not have done. So I just went and did it anyway, and I used the money I was earning from my job to pay for some adverts, and it worked really, really well. I actually had more leads coming in than I knew what to do with, just because at that time you could spend 5, 10, 15 pence a click on Google. Don't know if any of you are doing Google pay-per-click advertising, but for the kind of words I was paying 15 pence a click for, you'd pay £10 now. That's just how competitive that field has gone. So your cost per deal acquired through those channels has really gone up. So it doesn't mean it doesn't work, it just means it's more expensive. So that was kind of my start. And then back on the forums, in the UK forums, I was still kind of chatting to people, and they started asking me, how are you finding all these deals? Because, we've been developers in Leicester for this long, and we never got called about that deal. And I kind of explained I didn't find it that way, I found it this way. And in the end, I just thought, I'm going to write a book, because people keep coming to me and asking me all these questions. So I wrote a book, and it kind of became a bestseller. Sold about 3,000 copies, but only in that very small niche of how to find bargain properties. So that kind of got me well known. I then, from there, started doing workshops and events all over the country. I'll talk about them in a second. And from there, we launched a business selling package deals. I had a bridging finance company for 3-4 years, which I'll come to in a second. So these are just very basic. Oh, what have I done now? I pressed the wrong thing? Oh, okay. So my first few deals, I was totally naive, didn't have a clue what I was doing, but the deals worked because I bought the properties at the right price. So that was the key thing that I learned, is if you buy them cheap enough in the first place, and when I say cheap, I don't mean they're cheap for a reason, right? So often they needed work, or somebody just needed to get rid of it because they had inherited the property or whatever, and they just wanted to get rid. So I was able to buy them at the right price, and then either sell them, which I sometimes did, but usually I just refinanced. And so my second tip, I suppose, for if you're starting out, is I figured out very early on, by mistake, how to go and find money. So I got this email from somebody when I was still at the Christmas place, saying something like, if you've got 100 grand or more to invest, come to this event, it's about investment, or something like that. And I thought, well, if I wear a suit and turn up, are they going to sort of check me to see if I've got this sort of money? They're not. So I just went and turned up, and it was in this flat in Kensington, really posh. People were talking about £1 million deals and this and that, and here's me, some guy just earning £6 an hour doing night shift. But one thing I did do was I said to the organiser before I came, I said, look, can I just help out? And he goes, yeah, you can just clear up afterwards and just give me a hand. So I thought, okay, great. And I just chatted to a few people, and at the end of the night, when I was clearing up some stuff, this guy comes up, gives me a business card and goes, I'm an investor, if you need £100,000 or more in a week, give me a call, I'll give you the cash. And that was my start. That's how I got my first investor. Funny enough, I was talking to the organiser quite recently, and he said, I knew you didn't have any money. Half the people there haven't got any money, they were just there sort of chancing it. But the fact is, I went. I could have just said, I'm not going to go because I'm scared, or this and that. I thought, what's the worst they're going to do? They're going to just kick me out, right? So what? So, anyway. So, but the equivalent nowadays of those sorts of events is like the business angel groups. So there's something called the UKBAA, I think it's called, UK Business Angel Association. And they've got a list of events, where rich people go. By definition, you are wealthy to go there, most of them, unless they're like me. So they're going there to invest in all sorts of businesses. So I went to a few of those events as well and met some more people. I built this bridging finance company doing these deals, and then the recession came, 2008. Things started turning, and didn't really know what to do. Was everything going to fall apart? Was it going to be a disaster, or should I carry on? And I'd kind of discovered Warren Buffett by then, the guy I kind of put the picture up at the start. And he says this famous thing of so be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. So everybody was fearful. I thought, might as well be greedy, because he says so, right? Again, it's being naive, but it worked. So just kind of went out, just carried on doing what I was doing. At that time, I launched a coaching program which went for 5 years. We probably had about 220 students. The real reason for doing stuff like that was it got me very well known. So that's probably my third tip I would give is, don't be afraid to go out there, do stuff like this, go and speak to events, and introduce yourself to groups of people. Because I got well known as the guy who gave away cars. So for 5 years, I gave cars away. I think I gave a Porsche, a Mercedes SLK convertible, a bunch of other stuff like that. And that was really good positioning because it kind of just got me known by everybody. So people with deals would come and contact me, people with money. It wasn't a problem. I'm not saying you give your cars away, by the way. Just an example, of the kind of things that you did. So yeah, I kind of just spoke all over the country. I think in the end it was about 15,000 people I must have had at workshops and events. The largest ones I did were the Property Investor Show, if anybody's been to that in London. So you get like 2,500 people over a weekend if you're one of the main speakers there. And that was an eye-opener, just seeing how that worked. In that time, 90% of the people there were selling like foreign properties and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys remember that time, but then it changed back to the UK. Shared the speaking platform with people like James Carr and Alan Sugar, stuff like that. It's good. But the best thing about it was we gave a percentage of our profits away to charities, and these are some of the charities that we supported. So that was really nice to get to give this big check away and everything else. So what am I doing now? So about 2012, I came out of everything because it was just taking up loads of time to run these events and everything else. So I just kind of semi-retired. We had our first child to 2013, and sort of became a stay-at-home dad and did all that, which was great. People do tell me they're the best years, but it was bloody hard work, little kids. So yeah, that was great. And then only now, kind of last 2 years, me and Adam did a lot of stuff together and still carrying on doing deals. And I enjoy doing these sorts of deals. So these are just some local deals. I appreciate you can't see all the figures, but I'm going to talk about this one, which is the Nursery Road one. Because it's a really interesting project in terms of how it's structured and how we use investors' money and things like that. Blissett Road's gone on the market. We bought that for 86. It's gone on the market for 135, something like that. Evesham Road, we've just bought that, I think, last week. Something like that. Am I wrong? 3 weeks ago. We've got that for 140. We're thinking about either putting it in auction or just doing it up and selling it for about 200. Cherry Lees we did last year. Again, that's a very interesting story, but I won't go into it because I haven't got time. But if you want to ask me any questions about some of these, I can show you how they were structured. But let me go into. So this is Blissett Road, completely trashed. And it's funny because when I did my MBA at Loughborough a couple of years ago, when I started, they go around the room like this and they say, "What do you do?" And so you've got like a manager at somewhere and somebody who works at Coca-Cola. Yeah, very, very sort of high-end, well-known corporate jobs. I couldn't figure out what I did because I kind of do developments, I do investments, I invest in shares, I do this, that and the other, I stay at home. I don't know really what I did, so I just said something like, I'm part of a group of people that when they walk into a house and smell urine, they get excited. And they all kind of got it from there. So this was one of those houses, really, really bad. It was, this is actually the house cleaned up, by the way, after they left, so they lived in that kind of condition. But we transformed it. So actually, I talk as if I'd take credit for it, but really it was Adam who managed the refurb and everything. So my role really is to kind of get the money together, get the investors and things, and then Adam's role is to spend the money and make sure it goes well. And that's what we've kind of transformed it into now. Took us how many weeks, Adam, to refurb that? 8 weeks, yeah. So the build is kind of on and off, doing other projects as well. But maybe Adam can talk about how we got a lot of the materials really, really good prices. So he's very good at sort of going on Gumtree and places like that. Oh yeah. So this particular deal is really interesting because when it first came along, a lot of people missed the obvious. So there was a house being sold for about £250,000. There was a plot of land next to it, and everybody who wanted the plot didn't want the house, and everybody who wanted the house didn't want the plot. So people were making offers to the vendor, saying, "I want that, but not that." And nobody had thought to ask her, "Well, why don't you just?" Because she didn't want to separate them. So nobody had thought to ask her, "Why don't you separate them? What would make you, do it differently?" So I asked her, and she said, "The reason's simple. If I sell to a builder, they're going to trash the plot, building something while I'm trying to sell my house, and I'm not going to be able to sell it for a year." So I thought, well, what if I came along and agreed to buy the plot? Okay, but only start building once you've sold your house. Right? It's a very simple way of putting it. We couldn't quite agree on the price, but after a while we agreed on the price. And what I ended up doing was I exchanged contracts. So you all understand how that works. When you're buying a house, you exchange contracts. But you don't have to put down 10%. You can put down £1 if you want. So I think I put down like £100 to exchange. But it was conditional. So the exchange was conditional on me getting planning permission to develop it. And if I didn't get planning, I could still pull out. So most of the time your solicitors will say to you, if you exchange, you've got to complete. But you don't always have to if it's a conditional contract. So it was all written into the contract. So it was good for me because I could then have control of the plot, go for planning. If it doesn't come through, I can walk away. If it does come through, I've made 50,000 gain in that plot from taking it from garden land to now. At that time, it was a block of flats I got. And it's good for her because then she could lower the price of her house and sell it really quick, which she did. But again, nobody had thought to ask her that, and it sat there for 2 years, and nobody actually thought to. We'll just explain that. Now, this was the second bit that was really interesting. When I got the block of flats, the reason why is because I'm a buy-to-let. I'm an investor, so I just buy. My mentality is buy, rent out, and only sell if I have to. But looking at the figures for this, when I went to builders, it turned out actually it was going to be really expensive to build into flats, which any builder here would know in terms of building regs and everything. It gets really expensive, which I didn't really understand at the time. And the values of flats were quite low when you work it all out. I wasn't going to get a huge amount of equity in there. The return was still very good, about 13%, but it wasn't really that attractive. So I then had a friend of mine who's really good at design, and this is when I learned the importance of design. So I had this block of flats there. It would have ended up with about £30,000 of equity, 13% return. Okay, not bad. He came along, spent 10 minutes redrawing the plans, and it went from making 30 grand to now making 150 odd grand, and being much cheaper to construct and much less risk. So I learned the importance of having that designer mindset in property. So it's not just about the construction side. It's not just about finding the deal. It's understanding how to put it together, and that's what we call scheme design. So he's really talented at that, and he kind of helped me figure out how to split it into a bunch of into houses. Houses are cheaper to construct, so that brought the build cost down. They're easy to sell, so my risk went up a lot lower, and they were worth a lot more. So I won 3 ways. Okay, I'll look for that. So the way I invest, so going to the investor stage, so how we actually raise the money. We bought it cash. I didn't want any banks involved, and I'll talk in a second about why I prefer not to have banks involved. I put up 75,000. I de-risked the construction because I realised that was the most risky part. I'm not a builder. I don't particularly know if a builder's doing something there, what he's doing. I wouldn't understand if they're doing something wrong. So I've got a friend who's a developer. I took him on board as a partner and as an equity partner. So he put money up, I put money up. He only gets paid when the buildings sell. Yep. So I don't have that risk of trying to manage a builder who doesn't really care whether they sell or not. He just wants his money. I'm not saying all builders are like that, but that's the problem you'll have if they're not incentivized. So and then I raised 81,000 on top of that from some investors, and I'll go into how that worked. We gave them 10% return. So it's very simple. It was bought with an unlimited company, and the investors just lent straight into that using simple loan agreements, and then replace the first charge on the plot of land. Yeah, that's clear to everybody? It's not too complicated, really? All the money was sent to the solicitors, so it wasn't given to me and then I bought the thing. It was sent from them to the investors, and the money was released in stages by the investors. So what I did was I got them to fund the solicitor's client account, so I knew the money was there. That's when we started the construction. But what happened was, as the building inspector went out and then it kind of reached certain set stages, then the next tranche of money was released. So they had the confidence in knowing that the money is only going to be spent as and when the building got built out. Okay. So the reason why I prefer private investors, first of all, is speed. If you have the right kind of investors, I could ring someone today, he'd be there tomorrow morning, and the money could be ready at the solicitors by next week. It's just that kind of speed of just knowing that it's there. I don't have to mess around with filling in all these forms and doing all of that. So, having said that, we've just done one. The Evesham one was with Shawbrook, but it's just because the finance worked out cheaper. But I prefer to use private investors. Obviously, you can then scale, because then your funds can then be spread out across different deals, and you can then do more deals. That's an obvious one. But that's even the case when you have got money. So I'm not saying, I'm not saying use them if you haven't got money. Use them if you have, because in my project, for me, only putting in 75,000, I'm going to earn on that 75,000 another 65,000 in profit. So I've made nearly double my money because I leveraged. I used other people's money for the rest of it. If I'd have put in the whole 230,000 myself, I'd have made 10 or whatever it is, 120 let's say, for myself, well I've only made 50%, so that's the difference. So if I can spread my money across different projects that each earn me 100%, over time I'll be a lot better off. But that also means I have to only pick projects that are very low risk, because I don't want to be in a position where I've taken on a project, rather than earning the 100% I expected, I earn minus 100 and then got a problem. So that's why a lot of my time is spent figuring out what can go wrong and making sure that doesn't happen, and not taking projects that have a level of risk in which we're not comfortable. So you increase returns. Oh, the final one, which is really important, which a lot of people don't think about, in my experience, is the flexibility. If I had a bank on that project, and let's say the market there was a downturn, we were halfway through construction, the bank wouldn't care. The bank would say, right, we want our money back, you have to liquidate this, and we're off. Whereas with investors, the kind of people that I go for, they would say, well, let's finish it off, let's just rent them out, wait 2 years, and when the market improves, we'll sell them. So the difference there is really important. If you have the right kind of investors and they trust you, they might only take security over that property. They might not want personal guarantees and things like that, whereas a bank would. So if you're involved in some more complex developments and things, something goes wrong, you've got your other assets at risk, which you might not want to do. I don't. So I choose to have private investors for that reason. Does that make sense to everyone, yeah? Because that only really comes into play when you have that kind of black swan moment, when the market, something goes really bad. So when you look at all the different outcomes, most of the time the bank does work out cheaper, but for the times when things go bad, actually the private investors do work out better for you.
What sort of security are the investors asking for then?
Well, in that case, it's over the plot itself. Because don't forget, I bought the plot for half the value of what it was actually worth, what we're planning, because I bought it without planning. But the reason I didn't have any risk was because I didn't buy it without planning, I just controlled it without planning. And only bought it when it had planning. So there's three types. There's sophisticated, there's medium sophistication, and then there's non-sophisticated. It's very important you understand the difference between the three. If you go to sophisticated investors, who are your full-time investors, people who do this for a living, or your hedge funds, private equity, and all that sort of thing, they're sophisticated people. They're going to want really good returns because that's their business. They earn 20% elsewhere. They're not going to give you're not going to give their money to you for 8%. But the good thing is, if you are doing something that can scale, if you're doing a business that can grow, then you do want to work with those guys because they have the capital. They understand how a business they understand how to grow a business, and will really back you if you can build something big and scalable. But if you're just doing sort of deals here and there, I probably wouldn't go for the expensive, sophisticated money. That's the route I've taken. I prefer to go for people who are medium sophisticated, your business people, retired professionals, that sort of thing. People who understand, but property's not their full-time thing, so they appreciate what you're doing for them, and they don't really have many other options. If you're a retired doctor and you're sitting on £250,000, what can you really do with it? You might do some shares and things, but not everyone's comfortable with that. You might put it in the bank and earn nothing. When you work it all out, there's not really a huge amount of options. So a lot of them want to do property, but they don't want to actually do the hardcore, the work. So they make good partners. And then you've got the not sophisticated, which is like your friends and family. You've got people who've inherited wealth. People who really don't have a clue. And you have to be careful there as well, because you have to know what you're doing. Because if they don't, they're relying on you. And if you don't know, then you've got a problem if it doesn't work out. So the mentality of an investor is safety is really paramount. That's the key thing they're thinking about. Don't talk to them about returns as much. I mean, that's important, but you want to really explain to them how their money is safe, and so how's their money protected? How will you get it back? There's three qualities they're looking for in you: are you honest? Are you hardworking? And are you able? They're the three things that they really want to see in you. So, if you have experience, what are the exit strategies? So. In like my build, the exit strategy, it could be, if it doesn't sell, we then rent it out and then refinance. If that doesn't work, then we'll just keep it for a year or two and do something else. So we've got a whole bunch of options we can show them if it doesn't go to plan. So really explain to them what can go wrong. And your question as well, what's the security in offer? Because it might not always be a first charge. We've just done one where I've given them security on a different property I own, things like that. So if you've got equity elsewhere, you might say, here's a charge on that. Things like that. But it can get quite complicated. You've got first charge, second charge, floating charge, debenture, personal guarantee, unsecured, restrictions. It is quite, so really understand, or talk to people who have done it, before you go off and actually start signing things, or have a good lawyer. So how do you find them? The easiest way to find them is not to go looking for people who've got money, because that's the common mistake. I know a guy who's just sold a business, got £1 million. Fair enough, but he doesn't know you. Or if he does know you, the first thing they do is they and I've seen very sophisticated people do this. He's got £1 million, so I'm going to ask him for £1 million. From day one, he's not going to give you £1 million. So when I did, for example, Nursery Road, I took on a bunch of new people, and I set the maximum, not the minimum. I set a maximum of how much money they could lend. It's quite clever psychology there, if you understand what I'm trying to do there. I'm trying to say, I don't need your money, but if you want to do it, you can only put in 10 grand. And so that made them want to give it more rather than less. And so, by taking 10 grand and give it back to them with a good return, they want to now give you 50 and 100. If I'd have gone to them and said, give me 100, they'd have said no, or asked too many questions. So, one of the things you can do is even if you want to start really small, is just go to people and say, give me £1,000. If you can give someone £1,000 back with a little bit on top, then it's proving. Property networking events, very important. Business angel groups. I like to think of it from first principles, so really go back, really just think, if I've got money, if I had lots of money, if I'm one of these medium sophisticated or low sophisticated kinds of people, where would I go? That's how I think. I just think, where would I be? So, there might be golf, theatre, my tailor, makes suits, for people who've got money. I even play bridge, not just to meet people who've got money, but I do meet a lot of people who've got money through that. So just thinking, a Rotary Club, I'm part of that as well. What is Rotary Club? It's people who've got money, who've retired, who want to do something with it. So, you can join these sorts of things, but they're a bit out of the way. They're not the kind of places everybody else is going to. But beware, these things, you don't walk in there and say, I need money, and then walk out. It's, you go there. For me, Rotary, I didn't do anything with anybody for 2 years. Just went in there, did loads of charity work, helped out, showed people that they could trust you. So don't just look for wealthy people. Basically, you want to look for every 10 people you find who've got an interest in property, one of them will have substantial funds. That's just my experience. It will work in this room, it will work anywhere. If you've got an interest in property, about 10% of them will have funds. Now, the first thing you do is invite people to come and see your projects. That's the first thing I do. If you're doing a project, get people to come and see it. Really important, provide nice food. That's nice cake, all that sort of stuff. Take them out somewhere, because it's as much as a day out for them as it is to actually do some property stuff. So let them see what you've actually done. That's the best way, by physically seeing it. Start small with money. Be realistic with your projections. So don't go off trying to be really. Come to events like this, show people your investment proposal and say, this is what I projected, what might happen, but what do you think can go wrong? And there'll be someone here who's experienced will say, well, actually, have you not thought about this? And highlight the assumptions and key risks. So I've assumed the market keeps going up, or I've assumed the rents I'm going to achieve are this. The key risks are the market, does this, or the HMO model gets changed because the council introduces some rule somewhere. Do you know what I mean? So you're looking at all these. Because if you don't answer them, they're going to ask you them anyway, and you're going to look stupid if you haven't thought of them. So you're better off doing it anyway. And show your experience. It doesn't need to be relevant. If you're a project manager, for example, that's a really important skill to do a property deal. It doesn't matter if you've not managed necessarily a big property deal, but if it's a small one and you've got some experience that's relevant, then that's always good. That would be useful. These are just some other points which we can send you the slides if you want to cover them, but that's me pretty much. I think I've covered everything. The final thing I'd say is get really good conveyancing solicitors. That's really important. Some of the biggest pain points we have is solicitors. Usually solicitors get messy when you try and do things that are too complicated. So sometimes you might read somewhere, I can do this really sexy, cool thing, but you try getting it past the lawyers. Sometimes you need to just keep things a bit simpler, and just get the money in really early, well before you need it. So if you have got an investor, if you're completing in 3 weeks, get the money in now, and just pay the interest for 3 weeks. It doesn't matter. But the fact is, you've got the money in. You're not rushing it, trying to get it in the last minute. So I think Adam's going to talk now. Yeah. Thank you. Oh yeah. You start talking. I'll strap it. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Like that in your time.
Cool. Thank you for that, Deep. Hopefully that was good. Yeah. So I'm just going to run through my bits and do we think. So just first a little bit about me and what I've done and what kind of things I'm doing now. So I started in property at 18. I worked for a company in Northampton and then in Daventry. It was a letting agency. We managed a portfolio of about 1,500 properties. Not just me, I was part of quite a large team there. I was fortunate enough to buy my first house at 18. I'd been saving since I was about 5, thinking as soon as I got to 18 I was going to get a mortgage and get some debt. Rented that out as well and stayed at home, so had some passive income coming in from that straight away. After that I moved to Rugby, worked for a company called Newman's in Rugby. They do sales and lettings, and they also got quite a few fine and country franchises as well. Was lettings manager there, and managed a portfolio of about 500 properties. And then in 2011 I moved to Leicester, worked for Hart for 3 years, did sales negotiating for about 2 years, and then valuing for about 1 year, before moving to Barker's. So I worked at Barker's in Leicester as well for 2 years. Where did it go? Oh, there's a bit about Barker's there. So yeah, I worked for Barker for 2 years, set up their sales division in the Braunston Gate office, and we banked just over 200,000 in fees in 18 months, and that was just me, so that was solely me on that. So what I'm doing now, I was fortunate enough to leave my job in August, generating enough passive income from the property deals we've been doing, and also the property portfolio I've built up over the last few years. I founded Tranquility Living and operate 12 service apartments across Leicestershire. That was 1 in August. I've been taking on kind of two a month. So I've got 9 in Leicester now, and then 3 in Loughborough, and then we're just looking at some new locations to go to as well. And then the future, just grow Tranquility Livings across the Midlands, and also launch Tranquility Homes, which hopefully should happen in the next couple of weeks. We're just in the process of buying a letting agency and picking up a portfolio of about 100 properties, and we're going to continue to grow that and then run deal sourcing through that. So what we want to do is work with guys like you, who've got deals and want additional avenues to take them to. So if you come to us, we can make sure you get your good sourcing fees from them as well, and we'll put them out to our investors alongside that as well. So want to try and see how that works, and perhaps look to take it into other areas as well if it works well. Something slightly different than what the average letting agent or sales agent in Leicester's doing. So just got a question for you now, really. Just want you to think about really what's the role of an estate agent. Open up to the floor. Anyone got any ideas? We'll just write them on the board. Just want to see what people's opinion is of what we do and why we do it.
They want to sell it.
Sell houses. Best price.
Yeah.
Work the vendor.
Sometimes overvalue houses to get the business.
Work vendor. Overvalue houses. Yeah. It's fine. You can. I've been coming to these property things for like a number of years, and it's always been the elephant in the room. Before, what would you do? Oh, I'm an estate agent, and then there's been that kind of thing. So I'm used to it. So
Maximise fees.
Maximise fees. Yeah, that's a good one. Bigger fees the better. So, which is interesting because if you look at a lot of estate agency models now, they're actually minimising fees to make it more appealing to them.
It's the same fee for the property.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes me curious to why more people or more agents aren't going, well, why aren't we sourcing properties for guys like you and charging a big fee?
Because it's like £700 for
Yeah.
them, isn't it?
So
they don't even bother to come and do the viewings.
No, and that's the thing. So, I mean, why not do it the other way round? We make bigger fees, you get properties that you want.
There's a clash between the investors, don't you think? That they're just thinking, oh, they're making money, so we're not going to give them that instead of working together.
Can be that, yeah. I mean, hopefully there's a few ideas up here that will help you get over that hurdle, but we'll see. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that's what he was saying. You're matching properties to people like us.
Yeah.
That you're giving us what we want.
Yes, they're working with investors.
We're going to buy them.
Yeah.
So working with investors.
Yeah, I think that's good. Cool. No, thank you for that. So, I mean, I've put together what I feel is the roles of a good estate agent, me from an agent's point of view of what I want to do as an agent and what I feel that agents should be doing. So, I feel the role of a good agent is, number one, it's research. Using knowledge of the industry in local areas to establish a saleable figure for a property, supported with evidence of similar properties and prices which have been marketed or been sold. So if you've got a property that you want to sell, I'm going to come out there and value it for you. You've got a product, you don't know how much it's worth, and you're having me out to get my professional opinion of what it's worth. Now I should be coming with knowledge of the local areas, and also what products in the local areas that are similar to that have been selling. It's no different than Tesco's would do with any of their products. They'd look at their competitors, see what they're selling those products for, and come together with a price. So the next thing I think is really important is the marketing. Again, I think it's something a lot of agents do forget. So collating photos and information to present the product in the best possible light. The goal is to make it as appealing as possible to attract as many buyers as possible. Again, you'll have seen lots of properties that you think when you go in there, wow, this is a lot nicer than what it looks like on the photos, or vice versa, wow, this is horrible and it looks really nice on the photos. The agents doing the good job are the ones that are doing the second, because their goal is to get as many people to that property as possible, and then getting all those people there, they'll get the best price for it and they can justify it to the owner. It might not be the figure the owner wants, but if they've got 20 people round and all those 20 people say it's worth 60 grand and they think it's worth 100, then with the best of them in the world, it's worth 60 grand. So then that brings us on to sales. So using experience and sales techniques to achieve the best possible outcome for the client. So really, again, it's when we get an offer from you guys or from anyone, it's trying to get the best possible price for the owners. So you might not want to go up, but it's our job to make you go up, and that's how we justify our fees for the owners as well. And again, I think it's something that's often overlooked, and I think it's often a lot of agents won't work very closely with the seller or with the buyer to try and get to get it up. It'll kind of be a case of, well, if the seller wants that, I'll get them that. The buyer might have been willing to pay 5 grand more, but they've said they're happy with that. I've got them that. We're good. And it's things like that that drive the prices down. Because if we were always getting 5 or 6 grand more, then we can charge them 2 or 3 grand more, because they know that we're working really hard to get them the most we can. And then the last bit that I came up with was the administration. So kind of overseeing the exchange of information between parties required to get completion to transaction to completion. So just dealing with solicitors, dealing with the buyers, dealing with the sellers, just keeping the transaction together and getting it through as quickly as possible, as smoothly as possible. So it's interesting to see. I mean, I did this exercise just to see what you guys think an estate agent should do and what I think a good estate agent should do. And it's interesting to see that there are lots of differences between the two. And to be fair, for 95% of estate agents, you're probably right with those things you've put up there. And that's the main reason. If all estate agents did that, we could charge twice the fee that we're charging. So I just wanted to give you a quick idea of kind of from an estate agent's mentality of how we go about getting properties on, and what kind of things go on behind closed doors that you guys probably wouldn't know about. So when I was at Hart, we used to go out Mondays to Fridays from 9 until 11 every day, posting letters through doors for 2 hours. That used to be our routine. We used to have targets of had to post about 2,500 canvassing letters a week, and that was the target. So we were out traipsing the streets, rain or shine, posting letters through doors. Next step, taking the calls and booking the valuations. That should take about 10 minutes. Again, a lot of agents perhaps would only take a couple. Research prior to the valuation. That's quite a big part of it, because again, for me, when I went out to do valuations, I wanted to justify it. I knew agents would be going out and overpricing, and it was important for me. I wouldn't always win the business, but if I could show them why I was coming up with the price I was coming up with, then at least I got the justification there that when they came back to me in 8 weeks because they hadn't sold, I could say, well, yeah, let's go at this new price, and it's what I said. Carrying out the valuation, that will typically take 60 to 90 minutes. A good valuation will take that amount of time. It's kind of rapport building with the owners, looking around the property, and then discussing any questions they've got. The average seller isn't people like you guys. They don't know anything about the process or how it works, so you have to talk them through everything. So there's that element to it. Listing the property, so most agents will go and do the valuation, come back, eventually after some phone calls they'll win the business, and then they'll go back out and list the property. You've got to take the photos, get all the descriptions together and get the marketing and everything ready to go, again 60 to 90 minutes. Marketing the property, so once you've got all those details from the valuation and the listing details, putting all of that together, and then booking and carrying out viewings, 60 to 90 minutes at least, could be a lot more if you've got a lot of viewings to go to or it doesn't sell straight away. So I mean, that average process takes kind of 4 to 6 hours, and I think it's one thing that a lot of investors and people that are in your guys' position sometimes forget. So when people ring up and put in justifiably low offers for whatever reason, they're perhaps not thinking that we've had to go through a lot of work to get to this point. So if we come across offended, it's probably because we've been spending 8 hours to get that, and to be told that now you want to offer 25% what we've got it on for, it kind of just takes a nick of our work. So just things to remember. An agent is paid by the seller, so our client is the seller. We've got a duty of care to you guys as the buyers to kind of look after you and make sure we can assist you, but we're paid by the seller, so we're ultimately responsible to them. We work on behalf of the seller and aim to achieve the best possible price or outcome for the seller. A good thing to remember is that isn't always going to be price. If you guys go in there and say, look, we can complete in 2 weeks, the cash in the bank, here's the proof, that can often mean a lot more to a seller than £5,000 more, and they need to get a mortgage and they've got a whole rigmarole to go through. So do just bear that in mind when you're presenting offers. Make sure you present them in the best possible way, and that can really help. So why work with estate agents? So I just wanted to think really why a lot of investors nowadays will go out canvassing, putting letters through the doors and things, and trying to avoid working with estate agents. But if we can establish a good relationship working together, then it's going to be beneficial to everyone, because we've already established that not everyone wants to sell for the best price. You guys can complete quicker. Everyone's happy. Over the last 14 days, 61,000 properties in the UK have been listed. So, I mean, I don't know if you thought that would be more or less, but I thought I was quite shocked when I saw that. It was a lot more than what I thought it would be. And it just makes you think, if you're looking for 1 or 2 deals out of that, that's a big pool that you've got to find. So they are still out there through agents, and I think people just need to get to know the right agents, and the opportunities will come. Credibility. If you're looking to sell a house, who do you call? It'd be great if you called us guys, as in investors and people that want to buy property, but more often than not, yes, you can look online, you'll look at Zoopla and things like that, but more often than not you're going to have an estate agent out to justify what price Zoopla is saying or whatever. Property knowledge. Over 3 million house viewings were carried out last month. So as an industry, we're carrying out 3 million house viewings. I'd be very surprised if investors are viewing that many houses. So we're seeing a lot more houses, so we're seeing a lot of opportunities out there for you. Local knowledge. We know good areas, the bad areas, the selling points and the negatives about property. Deep and I have often looked at a lot of properties, and a lot of them we've just discarded because I know the areas. I've known what are good selling points of areas and what are bad selling points, what are good selling points of houses, what are bad selling points. Because things like, if it's got a downstairs bathroom, then it's not going to be a sale unless it's got an upstairs bathroom. Those kind of things that can really help to make sure that as an investor you're buying the right property. So, and we're here to help. There's not many agents out there that if you ask for their opinion on something won't be happy to give it to you. And number 5 there, our sellers listen. They don't always listen, but a lot of the time they do. And if you sell yourself to us and we believe in you, we're going to pass that on to the owners. And if the owners listen to us, we can get you the deal. So what do agents want and why? So just a couple of things I thought, well, give you an idea of what kind of the psyche is of an agent and how they work, or how I worked when I was a sales negotiator. So number one there, to sell the property. Why? For commissions. So as a sales negotiator at heart, I typically be paid 5 to 10% of the sales fee. So if we were getting a £2,000 fee, I'd typically be paid between £100 and £200 for that sale. Unfortunately, you can't really assist me with giving me a brown envelope. It used to happen in the past. It'd be great in some ways if it could still happen, but unfortunately it can't. If we got them, we'd have to pass it on to the owner, who might be very happy. We'd obviously declare it to the taxman as well. But little gifts can go a long way. There was very few buyers that bought property offers and then bought us a box of chocolates or a bottle of wine to say thank you. Things like that get you remembered, and I think that's an important thing I want to get across tonight, is that the important thing is to try and get remembered by agents. When they get a property that needs work doing to it, you want to be the first one they call, and if you're seeing them a lot and speaking to them a lot and they know they get gifts off you like that, then you're going to be the first ones on their list to call. Smooth transaction. The less we have to chase parties for the better. We're looking for really a no-hassle transaction between sellers and buyers. We don't want complications. We don't want things to be delayed for whatever reason. We just want it to go from A to B as quickly as possible, and as a buyer and as a seller, that's what you look for as well. So from an investor point of view, take control of the transaction. With all the transactions I've done with Deep, actually the last 4-5 transactions we've bought through agents, in all of those instances I've pretty much taken control of everything. So I've been dealing directly with the owner. So if the owner's been delayed on something, I've spoke to the owner. They've made sure they contacted their solicitors. So I've been keeping control of the transaction as much as possible, taking the work out of it for the agent. Just from my point of view, it meant I could make sure everything moved through as quickly as I could, and for the agent's point of view, they did less work, so they were happier as well, and it went through quicker. That just kind of reinforces the next point: straightforward transactions, no strings attached. There's a lot of investors out there that will go and agree a price and then get to the 10th hour and then they'd look to try and renegotiate. Don't go in with that mindset. If you go in with that mindset, you're never going to make any friends in a estate agency. Go in with the mindset, if you make an offer, you genuinely want to go through with that offer at that price. If for whatever reason the valuation comes back and there's issues, there's subsidence or something like that, justify to us why you can't pay as much and what you want to pay. Chris and I actually did one recently, which was a really good example of that. We had a sale agreed, we had a structural report done on it, there were some subsidence issues. Chris came back and was really justified why they couldn't pay as much. Unfortunately, I couldn't get that across to the owner, and he went in the auction and ended up selling it for more. But the way Chris presented it and the way he justified why we had to renegotiate the price, it was a really important part of it. Had he just phoned up and said, the survey's come back, there's an issue, we're reducing our price by £4,000, then it would have been a closed transaction. I wouldn't have even tried to. I would have told the owner, right, we're putting it on the market and doing that. But we tried to make it work because of the way things came across. And for us, we want more business. More sales means more commission to us. If you're working with local agents, make sure they know that you're their agent and you're recommending business to them. Really, everyone that you go and see, if you go and see a direct to vendor, you can't make it work. Call up your local agent and get them out there. Give us business and we will reciprocate. So how to impress us. So just a few little tips really on what you can do to impress us and what we like, or what I like. Arrive on time. We probably won't, but you always should. Agents are always notoriously late. We've got really bad time management, and I think that's kind of across the board. But you should always arrive on time. We like to be there. You're waiting outside, we open the door, show you around, and then you go again. Well, that's the average agent, but be there on time. Don't argue and try to agree. Sometimes with a lot of agents, they haven't got as much like property knowledge as perhaps what I would have, or some senior agents would have. You probably know more about property than them, but they don't need to know that necessarily. Telling them that you know more about it than them isn't always going to be the best approach. Just try and agree with them, nod and smile and go along with it. It's in your best interest to not... If they think you're a know-it-all and it comes across like you know more than them, it's not going to work. Just nod and smile and try and sort it out afterwards. Particularly relevant with things like rent-to-rent deals. A lot of rent-to-rent deals you'll go to and they'll just give you a standard tenancy agreement rather than a company let or a management agreement like what you want to go to. Just smile and nod. If they want to do that, do that. It's actually in your benefit that they do that, because it's not really protecting their landlord. Then afterwards phone up the landlord and say, well look, this actually wasn't the best option, this is why we should have a management agreement, it's better for you, and then swap it over. Be positive. It's not what I want, but I'm glad you asked me first. So often you could go and explain to an agent what you want. They perhaps won't get it, but if they call you, make sure you're positive about it. Just humour them. Explain why it's not what they want and make sure they keep looking for them, but kind of reinforce the fact that they're calling you about it is good, because again, not all agents will. Most of them will get a property, stick it on the market and wait for the calls to come in. So if they're taking the time to actually call you about it, praise them for it and try and keep that coming, because the more that happens, the more closer you are to getting the right deal with the agents. That point again, which I've already touched on, ask for their opinion. Property you've seen or resale value. So if you're looking at a property with another agent, there's no problem with you calling up the agent down the road that you know really well and saying, well look, I'm looking at this property, what do you think? If I was to do this, this and this to it and resell it, what do you think it would be worth? We never go into property transactions just based on my opinion of a property. I'll talk to at least 2 or 3 different agents, and that's from the point of view of when we present it to investors, we can say, well look, not only do I think it's worth this when it sells, but we've spoke to X, Y and Z estate agents and they all think it's worth that as well. So it's really important that you do things like that, because it helps from getting investors on board point of view and that as well. Be prepared for any offer, an offer on the viewings. So there's nothing really stopping you offering on the viewings. If you see, what we only ever go, out of 10 properties we look at online, we perhaps go and view 1 of them, but the one we do view, we go there kind of in the mind that if it's what it looks like from the information that we've got, then we're going to buy it. We do that to kind of maximise our time and make the best use of it, and we do all of our research first. So we go in there knowing that based on the figures they've got or based on a figure that we've got, that it will work. So there's nothing wrong with bringing an investor pack along. Bring proof of funds, bring a bank statement, bring a mortgage agreement, bring a commitment from an investor, say they're going to give you a certain amount of money, or a bank statement from them would be better. Bring your broker details and bring your solicitor's details. So bring all that kind of stuff along, and present it in a pack to the investors, to the agent. Say, well look, this is a great property, 80,000 is the price for me, here's all my information, present it to the owner and let me know. It means that estate agent can go back to the office with all the information in hand and just make the call straight away. It's immediately going to put you ahead of everyone else that's out there. Even if there's 5 or 10 people that have viewed it, in those situations, if there's 5 or 10 offers, they're going to go back to all the parties, ask them for proof of funds and ask them for their best and final offers. If they've already got your information there and all of that already, then you're already ahead of the game. So doing things like that, I always feel really important, and just gives you that edge, because not all investors will do that, and definitely not all first time buyers and things as well. And if you're coming across a motivated seller that's come through the agency, then that's going to put you in the best possible position. Of these stage, and then we can say, well look, it's not the best price, but he's already given me all the information. There was actually a point just below there as well that we've done on occasion, and I do think it helps. You can get your solicitors to send an email to the agent as well to reinforce the fact. So you can put your offer in, you present them with the investor pack, take their card at the viewing, get your solicitor to ping an email off to them just to say that you view this property and you understand that they're interested and we're ready to go. So things like that do really help. So yeah, just some tips and tricks I've picked up from good investors I've worked with over the years, and what things that we've tried as well. Be memorable. Why will the agent remember you this time or in the future? Why not give them customisable items? So, I mean, you can go online now and you can go on a customised site. You can get pens, you can get rulers, you can get teacups. Why not give them a mug that says that one, buy it cash, call Adam. Be sat on their desk every day. Give them a pen, things like that. Things that other people use for advertising in other industries, and they're just little things that I don't feel many investors utilise. I have worked with investors that have done it, and they are the ones you remember because you've got their information in front of you all the time. Be consistent. Again, I think we've said about that before. Ask for advice. Again, we've said ask estate agents for advice. We can often save you a lot of money. And get to know the agents and the valuers. Often the valuers are going to be out on appointments most of the time. In the office, just to give you an idea if you didn't know, you normally have administrators who deal with putting the properties on the market. You have sales negotiators who sit in the office. They often go and do the viewings as well, but they're like negotiating sales all the time. And then you have valuers that go out and value the property. You want to get to know the negotiators, valuers and managers really. The more people you can get to know within one agency, the better. I normally suggest that you work on 2 or 3 agents and try and get to know 2 or 3 agents really well, than try and go around every agent and only know them a little bit. Because at the end of the day, if there's 61,000 listings in 14 days and you've got 2 agents and they've got some of those, then that's all you need. You're not looking for every property deal on the market, you're just looking for 2 or 3. So yeah, that just brings us on to the last bit. I think Tracy's done some cards. Yeah?
Yes, I have put little pieces of paper in the middle of your table. So if you take one, if you just want to put your name, your telephone number and your email address on there, and Adam and Dee are going to do a prize draw.
Yeah, so this is just this is just a chance. It'll be to come into my agency to see it, to see how it operates. We'll go for some lunch. If you've got any questions and things you can ask. Then if you want to hang around in the afternoon and just see how it works, it's not always that exciting, but you're welcome to come and do that if you want to. So we just thought it would be a nice opportunity for someone that might benefit from it. So I need something to collect.
Yeah, I'll do.
There you go, yeah, cool.